Knowing DeAndre Hopkins wasn't going to be there, being told you're going to be the wide receiver one, that any sort of training or dieting or any of that could have been changed up differently to where his injury outlook isn't as high as it has been in previous years.
Sure. He took some Compound V and he is good to go now. He can play a full 16. No issues.
Oh, yeah. That's what I'm thinking.
What's up, Guff? We are back, baby. Grown Up Fantasy Football. James Reiner, Zach Maziarz, I'm Joey Marino, and we are here to give you the cold, hard facts and do a little discussion about two Houston Texans wide receivers that we are trying to figure out who is the number one, and more importantly, who do we want rest of season. And those two receivers are Mr. Will Fuller and Mr. Brandin Cooks. So before we get into that, if you like this kind of fantasy football content, be sure to like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're on the podcast, go subscribe and give us a rating, whatever you think. A 5-star would be nice, but whatever you're thinking. It really helps us to kind of harness the powers at B to create this kind of content for you.
The fantasy juices.
Yes, it gets them flowing. So be sure and give us those likes and subscribes and comment below who you'd rather have, Will Fuller or Brandin Cooks. And without further ado, let's get into it.
All right. I'm going to start us off, guys.
Do it.
Because this has been pressing on my heart for so long. Will Fuller or Brandin Cooks? Who is going to be the number one? Who's going to return the greatest fantasy value? All right. So let's get started with the Whites, okay? The Houston Texans, all right? First several games of the season, do we even really want to count? The first 3 games with Bill O'Brien at the helm seems almost like a scratch-off, okay?
Let's
Something we
throw
don't
it in the
really
trash
want to
can. Everything before then in the garbage.
Exactly. Now, granted, those first 3 games, besides being injured against the Ravens, Will Fuller was playing very well. Brandin Cooks came in on that game against the Ravens and still had a great fantasy day with Will Fuller out, but I don't know. It still looked very messy, very bad. The last several games, though, that we've had with Lil Romeo in at the helm, we've seen a much different Houston Texans offense and team in general. They have been passing a lot. Their play action percentage has actually increased. It was around 14% with Bill O'Brien there. Now with Romeo there, it's up to 29%, okay? Cooks in the last 2 weeks with this new system has averaged about 10.5 targets per game, whereas Will Fuller has been averaging about 9.5. So they're both playing lights out. They're both establishing that chemistry. Deshaun Watson is playing lights out. So really, in my mind, it's coming down to a few different things, a few different scenarios of that rapport, injury history, which I want to bring up some stuff with you guys in just a second about injury history, and just who's going to get it done. Who do we think? What do y'all think? Some of those facts, what do y'all think? Do y'all lean one way or the other with one of these receivers?
Start us off, Joe.
I was going to let you go first, but okay. So this is a tricky kind of situation. I think kind of at the beginning of the year and through the first 4 or 5 weeks, we were seeing it looked more like Will Fuller was going to be the number one. He was the number 2, the incumbent, after DeAndre Hopkins left them. And then you bring in Brandin Cooks. Now, Brandin Cooks has been a producer for pretty much all of his career. He's been with very high-powered offenses with the Saints, with the Rams, and even a season with the Patriots, where they went to the Super Bowl and won, mind you, so he has a ring. But yes, that's part of it. That's part of the fantasy football analysis.
That's
if
all
he has a
a
ring.
bunch into that. Yeah.
Got to factor
If
it
he's
in.
wearing that ring, then it wears down his hand, so he can't catch the ball as easily. So, finger strength. So we've seen Will Fuller kind of be the one here, and that was mostly in the Bill O'Brien offense for the beginning of the year. Lil Romeo Crennel comes in, and they're using play action a lot more. I think I saw a metric on Twitter somewhere that they were one of like the top 5 users of play action since Crennel took the reins. Now, he's not necessarily calling the offense, I don't think, because he's a defensive coach. However, it's freed up whoever that offensive coordinator is to use play action a lot more, and it's effective. And those play action looks, it's helped out Brandin Cooks a lot, because we've seen him have the huge games, 2 games in a row where we had 20 points last week, and then this past week he put up 19, I think.
Brandin Cooks.
What was it? Brandin Cooks 17.
17. Will Fuller
points.
had a good 21 though.
Right.
A crisp
Right.
20.
Crisp.
I think there's a lot of murkiness. I think there's more murkiness now than there was before between these two.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, James?
So, I think both these guys are going to be productive, valuable fantasy assets. I'm leaning Will Fuller, though, for the rest of the season if I had to pick one. I think Will Fuller is the more talented wide receiver. I think he's more consistent, just from a fantasy production standpoint. They're both injury prone, so I'm kind of throwing that one out the window.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to bring up actually with injury prone. This is I was contemplating this and wondering, and it just really, I wanted to bring this up to you guys. Will Fuller is very injury prone. Mm-hmm. This has been with DeAndre Hopkins. Do we think, for any glimpse of reality, that knowing DeAndre Hopkins wasn't going to be there, being told you're going to be the wide receiver 1, that any sort of training or dieting or any of that could have been changed up differently to where his injury outlook isn't as high as it has been in previous years?
Sure. He took some Compound V, and he is good to go now. He can play a full 16. No issues.
Oh, yeah. That's what I'm thinking.
He's
Honestly.
young. He's young. I mean, he got a couple injuries earlier in his career. He's young. I think he can bounce back, and I don't think it's going to hinder his performance. I think it's possible he goes a season without getting hurt.
Projection-wise, he's never, I don't think, gone a full season without getting hurt.
Not.
But if he had, I know the projections would be through the roof.
Yes.
Brandin Cooks, on the other hand, has topped 1,000 yards, I think, for 4 seasons or so. So he's actually done it. He's shown us that he can do it. Granted, he's been on some high-powered offenses, but he has shown us he can do it, you know. So I don't know. Will Fuller hasn't done it. And I know we can all say, okay, well, if you span this over a 16-course, season, or, their on-season average after 2 games is, the wide receiver 1, so we need to pretend they're the wide receiver 1. Well, Fuller hasn't done it yet. Brandin Cooks actually has. So
projections
I don't know.
don't win fantasy football games.
Exactly. Give me the guy who's going to project score 2 points that week. I want him.
I mean, the thing with Cooks, I think before in previous episodes we've talked about the debate between Will Fuller and Brandin Cooks, and in previous episodes I've said Cooks, just because I think that the history is there. He's been productive before. It's tough, but something tells me that they're both going to be productive. And something tells me that Brandin Cooks is still going to be, he may have the better year. I think he might. The only thing that worries me with Cooks, and it is with injuries, is the number of concussions that he's had. Mm-hmm. I think he had 2 last year with the Rams in Week 5 and Week 8. He had one in 2017. He had one in 16 and 15. He's been been through it up top. And
Up top.
up top, but
I hear he's cross-eyed now.
An asshole.
I hope not.
Spaceballs.
He's my cousin. He's my cousin.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just being contrarian. I want to go Cooks rest of season. But a lot of it also depends on your roster construction, too. And chances are, Brandin Cooks was going later in drafts than Will Fuller. However, neither of them were going, as a wide receiver 1 in any leagues that I don't think we've seen.
Yeah.
I think both of them, their floors. Fuller's floor is probably more stable as a wide receiver 2. And I think Cooks, I think their ceilings are both high-end wide receiver 2s.
I agree. And I think that's a good point you bring up, Joey. I think that both look like they're going to get the production, but at the same time, we have to think of draft value. So Will Fuller went a lot sooner than Brandin Cooks in most drafts because he was expected to be the number 1. Brandin Cooks, a lot of people had some goose eggs by him and also had just lack of production when Bill O'Brien was there to where they could have dropped him. We even talked about dropping him. So you could also possibly not now, but there was a chance you picked him off waivers. So the value is definitely there for Brandin Cooks, and I could see both finishing as top-end wide receivers. Will Fuller, his depth of target's a lot greater. His air yards are a lot greater right now, so I could still see Will Fuller finishing rest of the season with more fantasy points, but I'd say give me Brandin Cooks at a value and a steal.
So y'all are both going Cooks. ROS.
I think that Brandin Cooks scores less points than Will Fuller, but I think both are going to still be very good to the point where Brandin Cooks, you could possibly either get him off waivers or get him for cheaper than Will Fuller.
All right, but you have to go with one. Who are you going with?
Will Fuller scores more fantasy points, so I'll say Will Fuller.
I think I'd still go Cooks.
Wow.
I think rest of season, just because the beginning of the season was kind of garbage, and there's a chance he was dropped. I think he was dropped in our league, Zach, and I tried to get him, but I missed him. And I really wanted to get him because I think that he's got a ton of value because, yeah, he went later than Will Fuller in drafts. He probably went, I think his ADP was around the 5th or 6th round, I think. Maybe 4th. But it was below Fuller. And so, this could be like a tempered version of the Rams offense, where you've got Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. Both are very effective, but it's kind of hard to predict who's going to be the 1 or the 2 there.
I was thinking poor man's Falcons with Julio and Ridley. The poor
Maybe.
No
man's.
comment by Joey.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe so. I think these two receivers' skill sets are more. They lean more towards Kupp and Woods than Julio and Ridley, who are both huge guys that can make a ton of plays. I think I'd still take Cooks though rest of season because of the value that you get from him. He's undervalued, I think, right now, and I think he's going to produce. He could be a very high-end wide receiver, too, especially that Bill O'Brien's gone, Lil Remio's in, and Deshaun is free.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. Joey's got Brandin Cooks. James and I, Will Fuller.
That's right. Going out on a limb here, but that's what fantasy football is about. It's about staking your claim.
Yes.
And there's no better way to stake your claim than going to thrivefantasy.com. They are the leader in player props for daily fantasy sports. They've got NFL, MLB. I think they've got even college football on there. They've even got esports on there. So if you like watching Ninja play, then go bet on Ninja. They do all the hard work for you, doing all the research with any of the statistics. All you pretty much have to do is just take a prop bet on a player through any of the game. They're handing out tons of winnings, and you can use our promo code GUFF. That's GUFF, standing for Grown Up Fantasy Football. And when you deposit $20 or more, you'll get $20 automatically added into your account thanks to the team at Thrive Fantasy. So go to thrivefantasy.com or download the app in the App Store or the Google Play Store. I felt like I had to throw that in there, guys. We need to give Thrive a shout out. But that's going to do it for today's episode. You heard it here first. I'm going with Brandin Cooks. Zach and James are going with Will Fuller. Rest of season. If we're wrong, tell us. If we're right, tell us too. Zach just felt like going away because he was that wrong. Well, without further ado, go like and subscribe, go grow up, and get guffed.